She pushed me out of a helicopter and thought she was rid of me forever. While my son held awake, she rewrote the will and sold our land. Everyone believed her tears, until I walked into the house alive. And then I turned on the video. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories. And write in the comments what town you're watching from. I read every one. The wind was crisper at 1,000 feet. Evelyn Blair sat rigidly upright in her seat, a soft blanket draped across her lap, though she hadn't asked for one. Her hands, still elegant despite the veins and sunspots, rested delicately on her purse. The leather straps were worn smooth from decades of use. She wasn't afraid of flying, certainly not after all she'd been through, but something about the forced intimacy of the helicopter, the closeness of the blades chopping overhead and the scent of too strong perfume beside her, had her spine straighter than usual. Beside her, Lauren Kingsley was radiant, dressed in white slacks and a sky-pool silk blouse that clung just enough to hint at the body that had so thoroughly bewitched Evelyn's only son. She had always found the girl too polished, too eager to be liked by everyone in the room. And now, on this warm spring afternoon, Lauren was smiling that impossibly perfect smile, teeth like bleached tombstones, as she gestured out toward the horizon. "Isn't it stunning?" she asked, her voice raised just slightly to rise above the rhythmic thwomp, thwomp, thwomp of the blades. Evelyn nodded, keeping her expression neutral. She had to admit the view was, indeed, breathtaking. Rolling hills and emerald fields stretched endlessly beneath them, dotted with red barns and winding creeks. But the beauty of it was distant, and Evelyn had never enjoyed feeling so far removed from the ground. The earth was where her roots were, where the bones of her husband had been laid just 6 months earlier. Lauren leaned closer. "I thought it would be good for us to get away, to celebrate William's birthday in a way he'd appreciate. He always talked about helicopter tours, remember?" Evelyn turned her head slowly. "William hated heights," she said. "He only talked about them because he knew I liked them. It was his way of teasing me." Lauren blinked, and for the briefest moment the smile faltered. "Oh," she said, recovering. "Well, I still think he'd be proud of us for doing something adventurous." Evelyn didn't answer. She glanced at the pilot, a man in his 40s with mirrored sunglasses and a trimmed beard. He hadn't said more than 5 words since liftoff, just the usual pre-fleet instructions. Everything else had been orchestrated by Lauren, down to the blanket, the champagne Evelyn had declined, and the precisely scheduled route over the Blair family estate. Adam had not come. His work, Lauren had explained with an apologetic pout, had pulled him away at the last minute. "You know how dedicated he is," she'd said, with a soft chuckle, brushing a manicured hand through her honey-blonde waves. Dedicated. That word echoed in Evelyn's mind now. Adam was many things. Creative, generous, idealistic, but rarely discerning when it came to people. Especially not Lauren. The helicopter dipped slightly as it curved around the property. Evelyn's heart skipped, though she kept her face placid. The home she'd lived in for 40 years came into view below. The sprawling green lawn, the wraparound porch with its white swing, the grove of cherry trees blooming in soft pink haze. "Look down there, Evelyn," Lauren said suddenly, reaching across to tap the glass. "Everything looks so small from up here, even that big old house." Evelyn turned her gaze downward. "Yes," she murmured, "it does." For a brief moment, she felt something like peace, the pain of William's absence dulled by the comfort of home. The house was still hers, technically, though the estate was tangled in transition and control, something Lauren had taken a curious amount of interest in since the funeral. She shifted slightly to get a better view. Her left hand moved to brace against the frame near the door. The window was curved, cool to the touch, and the air suddenly felt thinner. She leaned forward. The door wasn't sealed quite as firmly as she'd assumed. The latch was there, but loose. Odd. Her stomach tightened. Behind her, she felt movement, the shift of weight, hands on her back. But they were not the guiding hands of a companion helping her settle. They were firm, deliberate. Evelyn barely had time to register the cold intent behind the touch before she was shoved. The world vanished beneath her. She didn't scream. The wind tore the breath from her lungs before she could. Her body twisted, flailing against the sky. Her purse was ripped from her hands and vanished into the vast blue. The world spun, a whirl of horizon and earth, before she saw the helicopter, now pulling upward, the figure in the doorway growing smaller. Lauren. She wasn't leaning out to call for help. She wasn't gesturing to the pilot in a panic. She was simply watching. Her lips moved. Maybe a word, maybe a breath. But from this distance, Evelyn could see the expression clearly. It was not horror, it was not grief. It was satisfaction. Time splintered. The fall should have taken seconds, but in those moments, Evelyn saw everything. William's face when he first proposed on the back porch with a flower pot ring box. Adam's first step across their kitchen floor. The long hours at the community center where she volunteered. The whispered lullabies. The funeral. The will. The last toast she'd made before her husband's casket was lowered into the ground. Amen. Pain. Blinding, sharp, branches cracked against her body like whips, leaves tore at her face. Something snapped in her shoulder, her left arm bent wrong, a rib or two caved inward. But the trees were slowing her fall. The final impact came with a heavy thud in a thicket of dry brush and leaves. Evelyn lay still, unable to breathe, barely able to think. The pain screamed through her limbs. Her dress was shredded. Her left leg bent awkwardly beneath her. Her face was wet. Blood, maybe tears, she couldn't tell. Above her, the sound of the helicopter returned. It hovered. She could hear it circle once, twice, 3 times. And then it faded. Evelyn did not move. She remained perfectly still, her breathing shallow. Every cell in her body screamed for help, but instinct held her in place. If Lauren thought she was dead, it was best to let her believe that, for now. She waited, counting the seconds, then the minutes. Only when the wind had returned to silence and the birds dared to sing again did she push herself up with her good arm. The world tilted, and she nearly blacked out. In the distance, beyond a clearing, she saw smoke, a chimney, a house. Someone lived there. She bit down on her tongue, tasting blood, and began to crawl. The journey felt eternal, each inch a new agony. Her limbs throbbed, her breath came in shallow gasps, and the world spun in sickening waves. But she did not stop. She would not die here. 2 hours later, she collapsed on the porch of a small white farmhouse. Bloodied, broken, and half-conscious, an elderly man opened the door, gasping at the sight of her. His wife rushed behind him, a phone already in her hand. They lifted her inside, careful of her shattered arm, and wrapped her in blankets as the ambulance came. As the sirens approached, Evelyn made her choice. She would not tell them what happened. Not yet. She would let them believe it was an accident, let Lauren feel safe. And then, when the time was right, she would come back from the dead. When the paramedic asked what had happened, Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "Accident," she rasped. "Helicopter accident." Then the world went black. She did not dream. 3 days passed before Evelyn Blair opened her eyes again. She surfaced from the dark like a diver emerging from the depths, slow and uncertain, every limb heavy with weight and pain. Her first thought was that she had died after all, that this was the afterlife, too sterile to be heaven, too quiet to be hell. But the fluorescent lighting above her, the faint beeping at her side, and the antiseptic smell told her otherwise. She was in a hospital. The room was still. The curtains were drawn, casting long shadows across the pale walls. A single vase of white lilies stood on the table near the window, delicate and pristine. Her left arm was strapped in a cast and sling. Her ribs ached with every breath, and her face felt stiff and raw. She tried to speak, but her throat burned like sandpaper. "Hey there, miracle girl." The voice was gentle, laced with warmth and relief. Evelyn turned her head, wincing as the motion sent a sharp bolt through her skull. The woman standing beside her bed wore scrubs and a name tag that read Patricia. She looked to be in her 50s, with kind hazel eyes and a calm, motherly demeanor. "You gave us quite a scare," Patricia said, bringing a cup of water to Evelyn's lips. "Small sips now. Your throat's been through hell." Evelyn drank, feeling the coolness soothe her cracked lips and throat. "What happened?" she croaked. "You were found unconscious near a farmhouse. Broken bones, concussion, internal bruising. You were lucky someone saw the blood trail you left through the woods. The medics said you must have dragged yourself over 2 miles. No one knows how you survived the fall." Evelyn closed her eyes. She remembered the trees, the branches snapping, the impact. She remembered Lauren's face. Patricia sat down beside the bed. "You fell from a helicopter, according to the preliminary report. The pilot's alive, thank God. Managed to crash land in a field not far from where you landed. He's in the ICU but stable." "The helicopter?" Eveline asked, though she remembered every moment. "Yes. Your daughter-in-law, Lauren, right? She told us it was a surprise ride in honor of your late husband's birthday. The aircraft hit turbulence and you were thrown from the cabin. The latch must have come undone." Evelyn said nothing. She turned her face slightly away. "She's been here every day," Patricia continued. "Lauren, crying, telling everyone how much she loved you. Your son, too. He's devastated. He'll be thrilled to know you're awake." "No," Evelyn whispered. "Not yet. I need more time to remember." Patricia nodded with understanding. "You've got a severe concussion. Take all the time you need." When she was alone again, Evelyn stared at the ceiling for a long time. Her mind ached from the weight of it all, but her thoughts were sharp as ever. Lauren had lied. She had fabricated a story and played the part of grieving daughter-in-law without a flicker of remorse. But Evelyn was alive, and she would use that fact carefully. Later that afternoon, Rachel Ruth Hansen, known to most as Ruth, arrived in secret, disguised as a visiting nurse. A decade ago, she had been a leading investigative journalist before retiring to a quiet house on the outskirts of town. She and Evelyn had met through charity work and kept in touch, though they'd grown closer after William's death. Ruth had always trusted her instincts, and she had never liked Lauren. "You look like hell," Ruth said quietly, closing the door behind her. Evelyn gave a ghost of a smile. Better than dead. Ruth sat down and lowered her voice. "I've been digging, just like you asked. And honey, you were right to be suspicious." She handed Evelyn a slim envelope. Inside were printed statements, signatures, and emails, each one dated, each one damning. "Lauren filed for power of attorney 2 weeks before the helicopter ride," Ruth said. "She forged your signature, had a notary in her pocket, filed a new will under the Blair Trust, naming herself as the primary beneficiary of your late husband's estate in the event of your death." Evelyn's chest tightened, not from pain, but from anger. "She also contacted the family lawyer," Ruth continued, "and claimed you were struggling with memory issues, early dementia. There's no official diagnosis, but she started laying the groundwork, just in case someone questioned the documents." "She was planning this for months," Evelyn murmured. Ruth nodded grimly. "Oh, and get this. There are 2 wire transfers totaling just under $500,000 from one of the Blair business accounts to an offshore fund, just under the reporting threshold. Guess who authorized them?" "She did. Under your name." Evelyn felt the blood in her veins run colder. This wasn't just opportunism. This was premeditated. "And Adam?" she asked. "Still in the dark. He's convinced it was a tragic accident. He's planning a memorial garden in your honor. He's hurting Evie. He's always seen the best in people." Evelyn closed her eyes. She had hoped, naively perhaps, that her son would have sensed something was wrong. But Adam had always worn blinders when it came to love. He had been the same with his father, idolizing him, even when William grew distant and consumed by work. "She's gonna bleed him dry," Evelyn said. "Not if we stop her." Evelyn looked out the window. The sunlight was muted behind the curtains, casting a dull glow over the room. She thought of William, of the years she had spent building their family's name. She had always believed that dignity came from patience, from silence, from sacrifice. But now she believed in war. "When can I get out of here?" she asked. Ruth smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." Over the next several days, Evelyn and Ruth planned quietly. Patricia, the nurse, agreed to help. She had once been in an abusive relationship herself and understood the necessity of shadows. Evelyn's recovery was real, but they would make it appear slower than it was. They needed time. Meanwhile, Ruth gathered more evidence. She accessed public records, financial disclosures, and internal memos from the Blair Foundation. Lauren had not only moved to take control of the estate, she had begun contacting real estate developers, offering pieces of Blair land as investment collateral. "She's trying to sell pieces of your legacy," Ruth said, "to build some grotesque luxury retreat on the East Ridge. Says it's in memory of William." "William hated luxury retreats," Evelyn snapped. "He liked fish fries and dusty porches. And she's rewriting history in his name, fast." Evelyn's release from the hospital was staged carefully. Patricia created a discharge report that suggested a transfer to a private facility out of state. In reality, Evelyn was taken to Ruth's home in a nondescript sedan with tinted windows. There she continued to recover, watched the news, and took long, painful walks through the garden. She wore a scarf to cover the fading bruises and used a cane, more for stability than necessity. The days passed quietly, but tension simmered beneath each breath. One morning, as Ruth handed her a fresh folder of findings, Evelyn sat down at the kitchen table and looked her square in the eye. "She's already told everyone I'm dead," she said. "Let's give her time to enjoy it." "You want to wait?" Ruth asked. "I want her to feel safe, secure, untouchable." "Then what?" Evelyn looked down at the signature on a transfer document. Her name, written in the neat loops she'd used for decades, but it wasn't her hand. "Then," she said, "I want to destroy her." Ruth leaned back and whistled low. "Now that's the Evelyn I remember." As spring deepened and the garden bloomed, Evelyn studied every move Lauren made. She saw the news articles about the upcoming charity gala Lauren was hosting in her honor, a legacy of light, celebrating the life of Evelyn Blair. The audacity of it made her laugh. Bitterly, softly. Lauren had hired a photographer, stood at the edge of the Blair pond in a soft gray dress, weeping delicately into a lace handkerchief. The photos ran in the society pages. The community mourned. Adam looked like a ghost beside her. "He's laying it on thick," Ruth observed. "He's laying the trap," Evelyn replied. But she doesn't realize someone else said it first. The final straw came when Ruth uncovered a video buried in cloud storage linked to the helicopter rental company. It had been standard practice to record flights for liability reasons. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. It captured the moment Evelyn was shoved. Lauren's face was not in frame, but her hand was. And that was enough. Evelyn looked at the screen for a long time, her face blank. "She did it," she said, "and now we'll make her wish she hadn't." Ruth reached for her coat. "Where do we start?" Evelyn didn't hesitate. "We start by haunting her." It began with a note. Handwritten, no envelope, left beneath the wiper blade of Lauren's sleek black BMW outside the spa she frequented every Thursday. The paper was ivory and unlined, the letters firm and measured, penned in blue ink. "Are you certain she's gone?" No signature, no flourish. Just that simple, chilling question. Lauren read it 3 times, standing in the parking lot with the wind stirring her hair, her manicured hand tightening around the page. A twinge of unease crept along her spine. She looked around, eyes sweeping over the street, the sidewalk cafe across from the spa, the row of cars lining the curb. Nothing stood out. No one stared. Yet the sensation remained, that prickling, invisible breath down the back of her neck. She folded the note slowly, slipped it into her purse, and told no one. That night, she didn't sleep well. The following day, another note appeared, this time tucked inside the mailbox of the house she shared with Adam. No stamp, no address. just a folded piece of paper resting between bills and real estate flyers. She saw your face before she fell. Lauren's breath caught in her throat as she read it. Her knees felt suddenly weak. She dropped the note as if it were burning her fingers. For a long moment she stood there on the front porch, staring at it as if it might vanish or explain itself. Then she forced herself to pick it up, brought it inside, and locked it in a drawer. Still, she said nothing. But Adam noticed. He wasn't as blind as she believed. He had watched her grow more restless with each passing day. The circles under her eyes deepened. Her wine glasses stayed full longer. She jumped when the phone rang. He tried to ask, gently, carefully, but Lauren only smiled and dismissed it. "Stress," she said. "Planning the memorial fundraiser is more emotional than I expected." Adam accepted that for a time, but he had questions of his own. Questions that had grown louder in his mind since his mother's death. The timing, the confusion around the paperwork, the legal changes made so close to the accident. He had wanted to believe Lauren's explanation, that Evelyn had grown tired, forgetful, and had quietly shifted responsibilities. But it didn't sit right. It never had. Now Lauren was unraveling. Across town, Evelyn watched everything. She sat in the modest second-story room of Ruth's house, sipping tea, a blanket over her legs, the curtains slightly parted. Through a long lens camera, she could see the driveway where Lauren parked, the garden she neglected, the curtains she had stopped opening. The notes had done their job. The first whispers of fear had taken root. "She's twitching," Ruth said, walking in with a laptop. "Tried to track the paper supplier on the last note, bought herself a brand new shredder. She's paranoid. It's working." Evelyn didn't smile. "Not yet. Not fully. But she's starting to believe the ghost is real." They escalated things slowly. The third note was more personal, delivered to her office at the Blair Foundation, inside an envelope this time, typed instead of handwritten, folded neatly into quarters. "You're wearing the same perfume you wore the day you pushed her." Lauren turned white as paper when she read it. Her assistant offered her water. She brushed it off, said it was a joke. But she left work early. That night she fought with Adam. Evelyn listened to the audio later, captured through a small device Ruth had planted beneath the window box outside the living room. The argument began quietly and rose like a storm. Lauren accused Adam of not supporting her, of doubting her grief. Adam asked her why she'd withdrawn thousands from a family account the same week of the helicopter incident. Lauren deflected, then accused him of being too emotionally fragile to handle the estate. She cried. He raised his voice. Eventually the house fell silent again. "She's starting to break?" Ruth said, reviewing the footage, "and so is he." Evelyn nodded, but she didn't relish it. Not the way she thought she might. There was no joy in watching her son fall out of love with the woman he'd once believed in. But it was necessary. Lauren had never loved Adam. She had chosen him, like she might choose a stock, carefully, with calculated potential for gain. Evelyn had seen it from the start, the way Lauren inserted herself into his life, sweetened his coffee, memorized the names of his colleagues. It had all been performance. Now the performance was collapsing. The next step was to go public, carefully, anonymously. Ruth submitted a piece to the local newspaper under a pseudonym. It was framed as an open editorial, "When Death Raises Questions, the Tragedy of Evelyn Blair." The piece asked why no investigation had occurred, why the casket had been closed, why the will had changed so suddenly before the accident. It didn't accuse, it only asked. But it was enough. The article spread through their circles like wildfire. At the country club, people whispered behind their menus. At the church Evelyn had attended for decades, heads turned in the pews when Lauren entered. A board member of the Blair Foundation quietly resigned. Donors paused their contributions. Phone calls were left unanswered. Lauren lashed out. She fired her assistant, locked her social media accounts, and screamed at a florist who delivered lilies instead of orchids. Evelyn watched it all unfold, unseen, like a director behind the curtain. But it wasn't enough to isolate her publicly. The real fracture had to be personal. Ruth found what they needed, a series of emails between Lauren and a local developer. In them, she outlined plans to sell portions of the Blair property for luxury development. The emails had been sent 2 weeks before Evelyn's supposed death. Ruth printed them out, slipped them, carefully and without attribution, into Adam's work bag one evening when he left it unattended during a charity planning meeting. It was subtle, but deliberate. 2 nights later, he confronted Lauren. Evelyn listened as their voices rose, muffled through the recorder. Adam asked her why she hadn't told him about the development deals, why she had approached investors using his family's land as leverage. Lauren denied it, then admitted it, then blamed it on Evelyn's unsteady state before her death. She wasn't herself, Lauren said. She told me to make decisions I didn't think you'd understand. You didn't think I'd understand that you were selling my childhood home behind my back. Adam's voice cracked. That you were, what? Rewriting my mother's legacy while she was still warm in the ground? She wanted it, Lauren shouted. She trusted me. Adam went quiet. You think she trusted you, he said finally. She didn't even know you. Silence. That night, Lauren slept in the guest room. Evelyn felt something shift inside her then. Not satisfaction exactly, but a cooling of the fire. The trap was working. The lies were fraying at the edges. The story Lauren had so meticulously built was beginning to tear. But Evelyn wasn't done. The final note came in the form of a delivery, a small, square box left on the front porch of Adam and Lauren's home. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a bracelet. Simple gold links. Evelyn's bracelet. The one she had been wearing the day of the helicopter ride. The one Lauren had watched slip from her wrist and vanish into the sky. Attached to it, a note. Not everything that falls stays lost. Lauren screamed when she opened it. Adam found her on the kitchen floor sobbing, the bracelet in her hands. That night, Evelyn didn't watch from the window. She sat in Ruth's living room, the fire crackling softly, a cup of tea untouched in her hands. Do you think he suspects? Ruth asked quietly. Not yet, Evelyn said, but he's close. And when he knows. Evelyn looked into the flames. Then she'll have nothing left. The next morning, Lauren canceled the charity gala. The invitations had been sent, the venue booked, the press primed, but she'd pulled the plug, said she was unwell, said it didn't feel right to celebrate in the shadow of suspicion. Evelyn watched the local news reporter shrug through the announcement. A surprising change from Lauren Kingsley, fiancée of Adam Blair, who has spearheaded the Blair Foundation since the passing of its beloved matriarch. No word yet on rescheduling. There would be no rescheduling. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, eyes closed, letting the warmth of the sun soak into her skin. Very soon, it would be time to stop haunting Lauren from the shadows. It would be time to rise. The air was heavy with spring rain the morning Evelyn Blair came back from the dead. She stood at the edge of the circular drive that led to the Blair family estate, the wind tugging at her coat, her cane planted firmly in the gravel, as she looked up at the house that had been hers for over 40 years. It looked much the same. The ivy curled obediently around the brick. The hedges were trimmed. The porch swing still creaked in the breeze. But it was not the house she had left. The windows no longer felt like eyes watching over generations. They were blind now, hollow and soulless like the people who lived inside. Inside, the house buzzed with polite conversation and soft music. Caterers moved silently through the halls, laying out crystal flutes and pale hors d'oeuvres. Guests drifted from room to room, many of them familiar faces from Evelyn's old life. Neighbors, foundation donors, society friends. They sipped wine and murmured condolences, speaking in reverent tones about legacy and loss. At the center of it all stood Lauren. Draped in a charcoal gray dress, she floated from guest to guest, her expression solemn, her voice just the right pitch of heartbreak. She had chosen her role well. The grieving would-be daughter-in-law, loyal to the very end, now burdened with carrying Evelyn's vision into the future. The memorial had been her idea, a living tribute to a remarkable woman, and she had orchestrated it with calculated elegance. Photographs of Evelyn adorned the foyer, Evelyn smiling on a cruise deck, Evelyn handing out coats at a winter drive, Evelyn in pearls and velvet, seated beside William at a charity ball. But the images were curated, cropped, decontextualized. They bore no resemblance to the woman standing now outside the same house, watching her own funeral unfold. She waited until the room had filled, until Lauren had made her rounds and the guests had grown comfortable, lulled by wine and sentiment. She waited until Adam stepped up to the front of the room, a folded paper trembling in his hands. His voice caught in his throat as he looked down at the first line of his speech. And then Evelyn stepped inside. The sound of the front door opening was unremarkable at first. Most assumed it was a late guest, but the murmur of voices dropped, fell quiet, and then stopped altogether. All heads turned. Conversations broke off mid-sentence. There she was, Evelyn Blair, in the flesh, upright, breathing, whole. Her cane tapped once against the marble floor as she stepped fully into view. Her face was bruiseless now, her hair pulled into a graceful twist at the nape of her neck, and her eyes, those sharp, unrelenting eyes, swept over the room like a blade. A woman gasped, someone dropped a glass, one man muttered a prayer. At the front of the room, Adam stared at her, his mouth slightly open, the page of his speech slowly curling in his fingers. Lauren went rigid. She didn't scream. She didn't faint. Instead, her eyes widened, just slightly, and a soft sound escaped her throat. She took a step back as if Evelyn were not a woman at all, but a specter, conjured from guilt and fear. "Hello, everyone," Evelyn said, her voice carrying easily in the stunned silence. "Apologies for arriving late. I wasn't quite ready to be buried." No one moved. No one spoke. Then Ruth entered behind her, calm and composed, followed by two men in dark suits, one a lawyer, the other a private investigator. Ruth carried a leather satchel in her arms, clutched to her chest like scripture. The lawyer gave a courteous nod to the room. Evelyn looked directly at Adam. His face had turned pale, his eyes wide with disbelief, grief, confusion. "Mom," he said, his voice barely audible, but, "We buried you. You buried an empty box," she replied, more gently than she felt. He took a shaky step toward her, then stopped. His gaze flicked to Lauren, then back to Evelyn. Lauren finally found her voice. It was small, trembling, carefully controlled. "This isn't real," she said. She must be confused. She's not well. She must have escaped some facility. Adam, call someone." Evelyn raised a hand. "Sit down, Lauren." The command struck like a whip. Lauren did not sit, but she didn't speak again. "I survived the fall," Evelyn said, turning now to face the room. "I crawled through the woods, bleeding, broken, but alive. I was taken in by kind strangers, and when I realized what had happened, what had been done to me, I chose to stay hidden. I needed to see who I could trust. I needed to see who would benefit from my death." Lauren laughed, thin and wild. "You're insane." "No," Evelyn said, her voice sharp. "I'm prepared." She nodded to Ruth, who stepped forward and opened the satchel. One by one, she laid out folders on a nearby table. Bank statements, legal filings, the forged will, transfer records, notarized letters, copies of emails. Then she pulled out the final item, a USB drive. Evelyn took it and turned to the monitor that had been set up for the tribute video. She inserted the drive into the port. The screen flickered. The video played. It was grainy, shaky, recorded from the corner of the helicopter's cabin, intended for liability review, but it was clear enough. It showed Evelyn leaning forward near the door. It showed Lauren reaching behind her. It showed Evelyn falling. The guests gasped. The sound of the rotors drowned out Evelyn's scream, but the movement, the deliberate push, was unmistakable. Lauren turned white. "That's not what it looks like," she whispered. "I was helping her." Evelyn stepped forward. "You tried to kill me. You filed false documents. You siphoned money from my husband's trust. You began selling off family land before my body was even cold." "That's not true," Lauren shouted, her composure shattering. Evelyn turned to Adam. "You asked me once if I trusted her." "I didn't answer you then. Let me answer now. I never did. And I was right not to." Adam stood frozen. His eyes were glassy. "Is it true?" he asked Lauren. Lauren opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Adam turned away from her. Evelyn exhaled slowly. The years of restraint, of silence, of bitter diplomacy, they all faded now. "The will has been restored," she said to the room. "All forged versions revoked. The estate will remain in family trust. The Blair Foundation will return to its original mission. And as for Lauren?" She paused. "She will face the law." The private investigator stepped forward. "Miss Kingsley, we have gathered substantial evidence against you, including testimony, financial records, and video proof. We will be turning this over to the district attorney." Lauren backed away. "You won't get away with this," she hissed. "You faked your death. That's a crime." Evelyn tilted her head. "And you tried to commit murder. Let's see which of us the jury sympathizes with." Police officers entered through the side door, summoned by Ruth moments earlier. They approached Lauren calmly. She didn't go quietly. She screamed as they took her arms, shouted that she was framed, that Evelyn was a witch, a fraud, a liar. But no one rushed to defend her. The guests watched in stunned silence as she was led away. When the door closed behind her, Evelyn felt the weight lift from her chest. Not all of it, but enough. Adam stood alone now, trembling. He looked at her, unsure, ashamed. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear to you, I didn't know." "I know," she said. "But you believed her. Over me." "I wanted to believe in love," he whispered. "So did I," Evelyn said softly. "But real love sees clearly." He nodded slowly. Then, cautiously, he stepped forward and embraced her. They stood there, mother and son, in the house that had nearly been sold out from under them. Days later, the headlines spoke of betrayal and fortune, of heiresses and hidden truth. The story played out in tabloids and news segments, each one more sensational than the last. But Evelyn ignored them. She had other work to do. Experiences, she reinstated the original board of the Blair Foundation and announced the creation of a new initiative, the Legacy Fund, a program dedicated to supporting elderly women pushed out of their homes or manipulated by caretakers and relatives. The first donation came from Evelyn herself, a symbolic amount, the same value Lauren had tried to steal. She signed the paperwork in Ruth's kitchen. Her hand trembled only slightly. "You're sure you want to stay involved?" Ruth asked. "After everything?" "I'm not dead," Evelyn said, "and I don't intend to act like I am." The house, the land, the name, it had all been a battleground, but now it would be something else. Not just a symbol of wealth or reputation, a place where truth had prevailed. Evelyn walked the gardens every morning. The trees were greening again, the birds sang. She wore her bracelet once more. It had been returned to her in silence, placed in a velvet pouch on her bedside table the day after Lauren's arrest. No note, no name, only the object itself, as if the universe had closed a circle. And perhaps it had. She sat on the porch now, Ruth beside her, a book in her lap. "What now?" Ruth asked. Evelyn looked out over the horizon. "Now," she said, "we live." And they did. If you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe. Check out the next video and feel free to share this one with someone who'd love it.